three of us will be presenting here. Uh, I'm Mark Delacave. I manage sales and account management here at Quizzify. I've been here 7 years. I'm joined by Peter Prosel, who is a co-founder and our chief technology officer, and he's going to walk us through pricing and implementation in a later part of our webinar. And we're also joined by our CEO, Al Lewis. And as you can see on the slide here, Al has written a couple books. One was about wellness outcomes, which talks about measuring wellness programs and actually seeing what kind of results you get. Another book that he co-authored with Tom Emmerich in 2013, and Tom managed benefits at Walmart for more than a decade. And in 2013, they were writing about centers of excellence, better medical management, better pharmacy benefit management, things that Walmart was very much a pioneer in. Now you can see at the bottom left there, we also partner with Harvard Health Publications. And that means that doctors at Harvard Medical School are reviewing our medically oriented content so that, and many times health literacy education can be surprising in what you actually learn. And this validates what you're learning. Now, on the right side of the screen here, we've been in a fair amount of publications. The late Marshall Allen's book, Never Pay the First Bill, which is about hospital billing, we're in there. And on the right-hand side, there's a book, The Price We Pay. Now, it's interesting, Dr. Marty Makary wrote this book in 2021, and he's a big fan of health literacy, and he actually talks about health literacy and how Quizzify does it on page 225 and 226. And most interestingly is Dr. Makary was just appointed to be the new commissioner of the FDA. And he is also a Quizzify fan. And having done a couple webinars with Dr. Makary, having read his books and having met him in person at conferences, all of his work is very nonpartisan. It's helping. His thoughts are all about making health and healthcare in America better, and he comes up with a lot of good ideas. Many of the ideas or content on health literacy we'll be talking about today in our webinar. But what he comments on in his book is he really likes our style, and you'll see a little bit of our style in a few moments when Al shows you some content. He does very much advocate the need for health literacy, and the book, The Price We Pay, is actually about certain types of hospital billing practices which are unfair, and we've actually collaborated with him on a strategy to keep ER bills from being like a bad surprise, a very high price. There's a method to do that, which is sort of a subset of our core product. So let's get a little bit more into what we're all about here, and that is dealing with this issue that people are just not health literate. Only 12% are, meaning they've not mastered the basics of healthy living and healthcare. And as people become more health literate, they spend less money in the medical marketplace with a lot less stress. And these are two government studies which we can send you, which basically map that out. Now, how we go about doing this is we offer our customers monthly lessons, and they're done in what I would call a creative quiz format, where you kind of learn by doing. It takes about 10 minutes a month. And what we do at Quizzify is we go after easy, impactful hacks, and we're going to show you a couple of these. But surrounding diet, dentistry, scans, weight loss. As I mentioned, we have these doctors at Harvard Medical School reviewing our medically oriented content. Our quizzes are done in a format where it's trivia, a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor, and that makes it engaging and memorable. When somebody starts one of our lessons, 92% of them will actually spend the 10 minutes and get through the learning every month. And 90% or greater than 90% will report that they learned something new. And when you learn different pieces of health literacy, and I would say that almost everyone here is going to learn something new today as we get into some of our content as examples. It does change your behavior immediately. And we have a ton of content. We have over 100 specialty topic quizzes. We've got lots of content that would line up with your benefits. If you have a second opinion program or an EAP, we can help people to understand and use them. We also talk about general health literacy uh, that people just need to know about that they don't, whether it's how to treat heartburn, how to sleep better, a healthy heart, diabetes, and so on. But we've got curriculum to go on for 5 years, and we've got like 100 specialty topic quizzes all set up. Now, without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'm going to turn it over to our CEO, Al Lewis, who's going to show you some of our content.
Okie dokie. So let me just go to screen here, just a sec. Let's let's do this. You learned a long time ago. It's always better to do show than tell. So let's do this in the way of show. Mark mentioned on the previous slide a whole bunch of a whole bunch of hacks. And we're going to show you examples of each one of them. And we're going to show you two from diet because nutrition is a disaster in this country. So the first question is approximately what percent of the population would benefit from a diet low in cholesterol? And your choices are 0, 10, 20, or 40. Um, and while we're waiting, we said to put the questions in Q&A. Mark, do we have any questions already?
Well, I mean, this is kind of a general question about Quizify. Is Quizify a substitute for a traditional wellness program?
Yes and no. It depends on your budget. If you have enough for both, that's great. I mean, we don't cost much. Wellness does. So if you add about 10% to your wellness budget, you can get Quizify. But a lot of folks are just saying, we've been doing wellness for years and years, and guess what? We look around the office and people are still really overweight, and our costs are still going up. So instead of spending, $50 a year on wellness, let's spend, 10 or $12 a year on Quizify and see what happens. And most of those folks stay with us. So do we have
We do, Al. This is a pretty smart crowd. About 57% said zero,
okay.
14% said 10%, and 30% actually did say 40 plus percent.
Okay. All right. So 30%, so if 57% said zero, then 43% of you just learned something. It Dietary cholesterol does not matter for most people, period. It's been disproven. There is a small segment of the population, about one half of 1%, who are very sensitive to cholesterol. The other 99% plus are fine. And you see this marketed a fair amount. Things will tell you they're cholesterol free, or for that matter, gluten free. And guess what? That usually means they're full of, to use a technical nutrition word, and I'm sorry if people aren't as versed in nutrition, is very crap. Okay, so you've got this one is cholesterol free, but it's full of sugar. So if you see the word cholesterol free, run away. That's the bad news. The good news is there's a lot of stuff you can eat you didn't know you could eat. Eggs, go to town on eggs. Shrimp, they're all yours. Lobster. These are things that have high dietary cholesterol, but are very, very good foods. And in the case of eggs, at least, inexpensive sources of protein. Okay, let's do another hack. Let's see if we can beat 57%. How many teaspoons of added sugar are there in this 8 pack of Juicy Juice with no added sugar? Mark, we must have some more
Yeah,
stuff coming in.
the question is, does this mean, regarding the cholesterol question, does this mean that I can start eating bacon again?
Okay, that's a very good question. The answer is the answer is it's a close question because if you eat too much bacon, leaving aside the cholesterol, the curing of bacon is done with nitrites, which are believed to be a carcinogen, and the World Health Organization says don't eat bacon. Now, in fact, we've looked very hard at the research, and you're perfectly fine having bacon a couple slices a day, a few times a week. It's not going to increase your risk. You should not go to town on bacon the way you could go to town on eggs. All right, how are we doing here, Mark?
Okay, well, 60% of the group said zero, and 40% said 30 plus.
All right, so 60% of people just learn something because oops, the answer is 30 teaspoons. Okay, so you might say, how can something say no added sugar and still have 30 teaspoons of sugar? Well, you look at the ingredients here, and it's all juices from concentrate. Now, the thing about juices from concentrate, and we've got a whole thing on this in Quizify, is that those are added sugars. A juice concentrate is an added sugar, but there is a loophole in the FDA guidelines. It says if you use juice concentrates to sweeten a juice product, it does not count as an added sugar. So they can say no added sugars and actually have 14 grams of what your digestive system would consider to be an added sugar. My suspicion, having talked to Marty on this, and he's not allowed to talk on the record for some reason, pending his ascension to FDA commissioners, that he's going to fix that, but it's going to take a couple of years. These things take 2 years. So for the next 2 years, you got to use Quizify if you want your employees to learn this. Now, the good news is there are healthy juice box options. The bad news is you've never heard of them. They're very hard to come by. Here's one that actually says contains no juice, which is very honest. The others don't say that, but it's basically flavored water, and it's available in a kid's size. And here's another one that is low in sugar, and it tastes okay. It only has 5 grams in 6 ounces plus of sugar as opposed to 14 grams. So they're out there, but you got to look. So the importance of somebody asked earlier about do you need a wellness vendor? Honestly, this particular crowd of educators does not need a wellness vendor because they should already know. Your folks should already know that you shouldn't smoke. You shouldn't eat added sugar. You should exercise more. They already know this, but they don't know where the sugars are hidden. And that's where we come in, as 70% of you just learned. You can't improve long-term health outcomes without Quizify education, as 70% of you just learned. But now let's talk about short-term because you want to find an ROI right away. So let's start with dental. Now, people tend to ignore dental in the benefits because they are so they're minor for the employer. They're quite major for employees, but they're minor for the employer. So the question very simply is, what should you do about a cavity? And the answer is, do you brush them away with a fluoride toothpaste before they get worse? Do you get them filled before they get worse? Or you just tell the dentist to fix them in without any drilling and filling? Um, Anything else come in, Mark?
Uh, yeah, what is Quizify's take on saturated fat?
Okay, well, buckle your seatbelts. Saturated fat in the quantities that most people eat them in is perfectly fine if it's dairy fat. If it's dairy fat. In fact, if you were to go to our refrigerator, if we had more time, I would literally walk over to the refrigerator open. You'd see we've got whole milk. We've got that 5% Fage yogurt. I use half and half when I make stuff. And guess what? I've got incredible blood values. Now, as for saturated fat for meat, that's an open question. Okay, so Quizify treads very gently on that, but saturated fat for dairy, we are all in. The things that are going to get you are going to be the hidden sugars. Even the salt isn't going to get remotely as many people as the hidden sugars. All right, what do we have here, Mark?
Well, Al, I think we have a pretty sharp crowd here that may have been reading some of your material. About 75% said tell your dentist to fix them without needles and drilling, and
Okay.
30% said get them filled before they get worse.
All right. Well, I think part of it is I
25%.
accidentally, I accidentally clicked ahead. I hit the wrong button. But yes, this is the case that silver diamine fluoride is the go-to treatment for cavities for dentists who, have a trust fund or something and don't need to worry about their income. There are all sorts of articles about it. The way it works is the dentist uses a drop of this stuff. It's called Advantage Arrest. They put on something called a microbrush and they brush it onto the decay. They don't have to see, normally you'd have to drill out not just the decay, but a whole bunch of enamel underneath it in order to get the cavity to stick. Well, this time you're just kind of suffocating the cavity so it doesn't get worse. It's a breakthrough therapy. It's the only dental breakthrough therapy out there. It's required by the American Association of Pediatric Dentistry to be discussed with parents. Newsflash for those of you who are parents, it isn't, even though it's required. There is zero evidence against. There's no controversy about this. It does stain the decay. It turns the decay black, so it's best for baby teeth and molars, but you have to ask for it because dentists don't want to lose the income. And I myself got a cavity in 2021, and I paid $39 out of pocket for it. My wife's employer did not cover it at the time. I think I've knocked some sense into them since then. So they didn't pay anything, meaning you wouldn't pay anything. And I paid, $39 instead of 50% of a cavity. And if I knew you folks better, I would open my mouth and show you the little black spot in my back left molar where the decay was. And to give you an idea of your short-term ROI on all of Quizify, if you are covering 1,000 people, they are filling about 300 cavities, a little bit more than 300 cavities a year. That's essentially a cavity almost every day. If you can get 100 of them to spend $40 instead of $160, save 120. That by itself, the one thing, just this one item with 10% of people doing it pays for all of Quizify. There's no vendor out there that has an ROI like that. And by the way, that doesn't include the fact that the employee is going to love you. We've got all sorts of testimonials. In fact, Mark, let's send a link to the testimonials when we send this out afterwards about the benefits to the employee, the kids, and the family and reduce stress. And now when you go to the dentist, it's a 2-minute procedure instead of you got to spend half a day there plus the drooling on the way back. So the next question is, how does the radiation in a CAT scan compare to the radiation in an X-ray? 50 to 1,000 times more, 5 to 10 times more, about the same, or there is no radiation in a CAT scan. And we probably have a few questions backed up here, I would imagine,
Yeah.
Mark. Would we?
Speaking of dental, does Quizify have content on water fluoridation?
Uh, so we've looked into this very carefully, and in fact, it is not as much of a layup to fluoridate water as one would have thought. When people first started fluoridating water, it made a great deal of sense because toothpaste and dental care and toothbrushes were nowhere near as technologically advanced as they are now, and the amount of tooth decay went way down. It was also not known that, in fact, if you overdo it with fluoridation, it can have an impact on IQ. So we aren't saying fluoridate or don't fluoridate. We're saying it's a close question. We do have material on it. Frankly, we would stay away from using it as a question. We do have a question if you want it, but we would stay away from it because we try to work in areas where it's a fact, like silver diamine fluoride, rather than a controversy because we don't want to get half the people upset with us. We've gotten some tough questions today. Okay, Mark, what do we have
Okay,
here?
30% said 50 to 100 times, 30% said 5 to 10 times, 30% said about the same, and 10% said there's no radiation in a CT scan.
All right. Well, 70% of you just learned something here because there is 50 to 1,000 times more radiation in a CAT scan. And Americans demand far too many of them. In fact, there's an article in the Journal of American Medical Association slamming our addiction to unnecessary scans. This is the United States' amount of scans. As they say in the recording industry, we are number one with a bullet in terms of scans being done. This is the average for the Organization of Economic OECD. And let me give you a little personal story. I was just at I have been proposed six completely unnecessary scans in the last 20 years by people who are salaried and don't make any extra money if I get a scan. This happened as recently as last week when it's a long story, but I had some bladder tumors about 20 years ago because I was exposed to carcinogen in the 1980s, a bladder carcinogen. And this new urologist wanted to scan my kidneys and my whole midsection, which is 1,000 times more, not 50. And I said, well, isn't there a lot of radiation scans? And he said, quote unquote, it's like an X-ray. Eh. And so, needless to say, I passed on it. And I also said, well, isn't it likely to show things that have things show up that don't exist? Those are called incidentalomas. You learn that in Quizzify. And he said, well, that could happen. No, I'm done with this urologist. I haven't had a bladder tumor in 15 years. I don't even know why I bothered to go, except my PCP made me. Um,
Yeah, we just had a comment from the group here that see about the impact is worse for children. Yeah.
oh, yes. I don't know that it's still the case, but as of a couple of years ago, CT scans on children were the fastest growing category, CT scans. And the impact is greater for kids because number one, they have more time to develop a radiation-induced tumor during their life, and number two, their cells are still dividing, so they are more susceptible to the radiation. So thank you whoever put that comment in. Okay, so uh, GLP-1s, weight loss drugs, big category. We've got ridiculous amounts of material on us. We excel at dissuading people. So let's do a little bit of a lesson now. Number one, in case you haven't noticed, they do balloon your costs. And you do want to cover them. If you do want to cover them, it's because it's for the employees. It's not for to save money. Okay, just be very clear about that. But you want to just have the employees who are going to benefit from it use it. So there are about two-thirds of the employees are what we call GLP curious, meaning they're going to drop out before they benefit. And this is well established in the literature that it takes the average person only lasts 4 to 6 months on these things, and then they go back to baseline. So you've wasted absurd amounts of money on people who never should have been taking them in the first place. And not to mention that there's the side effects and the frustration. What we are able to do is dissuade the GLP curious from doing this in the first place with what we call internally our Curb Their Enthusiasm quiz, which is 29 questions that are pretty darn sure to dissuade people unless they're serious. Speaking of serious, for the GLP serious, there are about a third who, what we say, go the distance, but they need education in order to persist. They have to learn how to shop for and order food, all this stuff about the hidden sugars, everything you've been seeing, and much, much more. And then they also need to be aware of the side effects and the health risks. When they get prescribed these things, you seriously think their doctor is spending a ton of time going through all these things with them, the side effects and the risks? Let's look at one example to see what doctors may overlook. So the question here is, what major catch of weight loss drugs is most likely to get overlooked? You must drink lots of water. You must drink lots of water even when you're not thirsty. Your food addiction can be transferred to a real alcohol addiction. If your blood pressure is already elevated, it could increase. You could experience nausea, diarrhea, or constipation. I'm seeing a fair number of
Yeah.
questions in here, Mark. So what do we
We
have?
have what are your recommendations about artificial sweeteners?
We have a whole quiz on artificial sweeteners, and the worst is the stevia, I think. That will get you. It causes leaky gut syndrome. We have in this quiz, we go through each artificial sweetener and we quiz people on what the issues with them are. And then at the end, the final question, because we always like to leave people, we don't want to. I mean, you look at these wellness vendors; it's always don't do this, don't drink, don't smoke, don't eat meat, all this stuff. We like to just with the juice boxes give people some good news. And the good news about the artificial sweeteners is if you mix them up, you're very, very unlikely to be harmed by them because there's a dose response effect in all of them, but the dose response effect is different. And if you are able to stay under the threshold for the response, for the bad response, for any given one of them, you can sweeten as much as you want if you mix it up. They all come in a little different colored packets and everything. So note to whoever said that as soon as you sign up for Quizify after the launch quiz, ask for the artificial sweeteners quiz.
There's another thing that's relevant to this question. When you talk about the weight loss drugs, do you mean drugs being prescribed for diabetes, Ozempic and Mounjaro, or diabetes and obesity, or just obesity, Wegovy, Zepbound?
Okay, another good question. We're generally talking about the whole class. The difference is that for diabetics, the benefits exceed the costs, whether that's true financially or in general. They do. People do tend to stick with them when they're diabetic. So we don't even discourage diabetics from using these drugs.
So, and regarding the dropout rate is part of the question as well.
The dropout rate is much, much lower for diabetics than it is for people using it for weight loss. So for weight loss, the dropout rate is much higher, and the financial benefit to you as an organization is essentially zero. That's been proven multiple times that every dollar you spend on a weight loss drug is a dollar that comes out of the bottom line. So Mark, what do we have here?
Well, 100% said you could experience nausea, diarrhea, or constipation.
Okay, well, 100% just learned something because the question was not what are you most likely to experience, where that would have been the right answer. The question is what is most likely to get overlooked? And 100% of you've overlooked this. You must drink lots of water even when you're not thirsty. Okay. The thing about this is that the same mechanism that suppresses your appetite suppresses your sense of thirst as well. The difference is you don't want your sense of thirst suppressed. And you need to make yourself little notes, put on your phone alarms to drink when you're not thirsty, because even mild dehydration will make your digestive problems worse. It can create dry mouth, and in our many of our quizzes, we talk about dry mouth. It's particularly among the 50-year-old and older crowd. It creates dental issues because your saliva is not functioning. And it also stresses your kidneys. I mean, your kidneys are already being stressed because of the drug itself, but now you're not you need to dilute the effect of these things going through your kidneys. So you could end up with kidney problems if you don't drink enough water. What we just learned is that most busy doctors are not taking the time to explain this risk, and guess what? Other risks as well. So to sum,
It's such a great example of how education can really matter because most people are already kind of pushing it with hydration. The feeling of thirst is supposed to make you drink water. We evolved to drink water, but we drink soda, coffee, alcohol, but many things that are already actually, although they're liquid, they actually further compound the dehydration. And now, if you kind of have this drug that sort of magically reduces the sense of thirst, which pretty much nothing else does, right? So this is one that can really creep up on you with no warning sign because it's not like kidneys have nerves that feel pain if there's a problem.
and nobody's going to notice the dry mouth either and think that it's important. So to summarize the content of Quizify, as you just noticed, it's all factual. There's no fluff. There's no, oh, walk more. And well, I mean, we do tell people. Actually, you know what we tell people on the walking? We tell them, tell them walk more. Well, I don't have the time, but we tell them, I don't care how much you walk, but walk faster. If you are conscious of how fast you're walking, you are getting significant exercise. If you're just ambling around, you're probably not. But so we're talking facts. We're not talking fluff. We've got the Harvard Medical Seal. No other vendor has that. We present it in a way that's very familiar to educators, and we tend to, as you'll see, do very well with this segment of the market. And as Mark mentioned earlier, you can customize it, and you can talk to us about our weight loss curriculum as well. We've got that huge. Um, so here's what the average Quizify player is learning in 1 year. They're taking 8 lessons. This is the average of anybody who takes at least one is doing 8. So they're learning all sorts of stuff, just like you did today. They are that's 80 questions, 80 questions that they're learning, and they are linking through to 4 in-depth articles. So every other person who's doing this is linking through at least once because they really want to learn more about this topic. Now, the learn more thing is very important um, when it comes to the question of engagement. Now, to start, I would note that there's no other vendor so engaging that they get compensated to present at conferences, and we do. And let's talk about the difference between participation and engagement. So this is the Vermont Public Schools, which is one of our uh, significant educational groups. So they get 88% of the teachers in Vermont. There are a ton of teachers in Vermont. They got a lot of small schools, small towns to register, and they have an incentive, not a big one, but enough of an incentive that 37% basically play every month and 65% play at least a few times a year. 94% will complete the quizzes, which is also very good. So that's participation. There's an incentive for that. Now, the difference between participation and engagement. This is engagement. There is no incentive in Vermont or anywhere else to click through on learn more links right here or to repeat a quiz so that you can solidify your learning or to report that you've learned something new. And if you look down here, these are the number of people playing the quizzes every month or during these months. These are the number of quizzes that they play. So we have bonus quizzes. People are playing extra quizzes to earn no incentive. This, my friends, is engagement, not participation. Anybody can pay people to get participation. Quizify gets engagement. Um, so with that, I will turn it over to Peter. I'm going to stop sharing, and Peter, you're going to take over, or do you want to want me to just keep it?
I will take over. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Yeah, and by the way, I think this number is actually approaching 2 million now, but it tipped over half at some point this year. So we are approaching 2 million quizzes completed overall across all of our clients. So that's a nice milestone. It's picking up. That rate is also picking up over time. Okay, so now when you're considering a new vendor, we've thought about this a lot in terms of because our goal is just to really educate people and it's not to cause any kind of friction or problems for anybody. So we thought very much about what would make this easiest for you all to adopt. And we kind of think of it in 2 ways that for any new solution you adopt, you're paying twice in a way, where there's the budget, the obvious way. And I think you'll see in a moment that like we try pretty hard to be a rounding error on your budget, and so that part is almost never a concern. It's certainly not one that has been voiced to us by anybody. But the other way that you're probably more familiar with is with hassle, bandwidth constraints, and the quote yet another thing that you have to manage. And I actually spent a lot of research trying to find a photo of how people feel about adopting new solutions at work, and this was the best one that came up right here. So we have tried very hard to remove this feeling of hassle and just friction from the process. So here's how we think about hassle in terms of implementing Quizify. These are all going to be things that are optional, okay? So if you want to participate in any of these things I'm about to say, you can, but it is not required at all in order for the solution to work. So you can review the curriculum and provide comments, ask for changes, and so forth if you want. Optional. You can help us work on the marketing materials, adjust them, add your own content, but you don't have to. We have a lot of that stuff off the shelf. Member communication. We actually can handle all the emailing. Soon we're actually going to be adding SMS capability as well. So we can actually just send this to your members and they will get it from us. They'll participate. You don't have to do anything unless you want to. Customer service. People have issues logging in, questions, we can handle all of that. Rewards and incentives. This, I don't know of many vendors that have this. I haven't encountered any, where we actually have our own internal reward system that you can just press a button and it works. It's a function of the total budget of the whole account. And we run it, we send out the gift cards. It's kind of usually a raffle type format. And again, so if you have an incentive and you really want to plug us into it, that is available to you as an option, but you don't have to. And reporting. So whether or not you want to review the reporting is up to you, but we can just send you either summary or detailed reporting as you prefer, and you don't have to spend any time really processing reporting or dealing with that. Now, there's one single thing that we do require, which is essential to make this work at all, which is you just need to tell us how to reach your users. That's all you have to do. It could be an email list that you give to us and we send things around. That's how most people do it. It works very simply. Or in some cases, we can do something on your intranet or, put up posters or some other things. But like all we really need is a way to reach your population and we are good to go. So, and in that spirit, so this is something we call the default 5-minute implementation, where assuming you don't want to get into any custom stuff or back and forth or editing marketing content, we can just get started literally in 5 minutes, where we wouldn't take any PHI. All we would need is a list of emails. You give it to us, we load it up, we send out an email, it's done. And similarly, we could give you a link to put on any intranet or posters. We also have posters you can just print and use and so forth. And then reporting is sort of, as needed. It's available to you at any time. If you'd like us to send it to you, we can do that, or you can access it on a simple website that we give you. So that's the default. And I mean, hopefully you're seeing that this can be very straightforward. In terms of our usual process, assuming you do want to do something more than just the default, we would just have a simple 2-page contract. It's a very sort of common sense, plain language contract. We would have an optional implementation meeting, assuming we want to get into anything detailed. And that's where we would discuss any sort of nuances around communication, anything you would like to emphasize or convey. We would, make any adjustments to the standard curriculum that may suit you in particular. We would show you the admin tools that are available to you and any kind of marketing materials and so forth. And in that case, if we do have any sort of customizations, again, which are all optional, we would budget, between a week to 30 days just to get everything straightened out. So, but again, just as a reminder, this could be implemented, today. I mean, if somebody has the email list ready to go, they send it to me, we can get started right after this meeting, in theory. So just keep that in mind. Now, I said that we tried to budget ourselves to be a rounding error, and we do that in the form of 2 basic prices, and you can pick whichever one you like. We have the conventional price, which most wellness does, which is just per employee per year, and it's $12 per employee per year. Or we have engagement pricing, which we also call, if they don't play, you don't pay. So that would end up being $6 per quiz completed. Now, if you do the math behind the scenes, that works out to roughly 25% average engagement, which is about our global average. For education, it might actually be higher. It's usually high on the higher side. We also have some blue collar manufacturers and other clients that tend to be a little bit lower, but educators tend to really flock to this. But if you're concerned about low engagement, which many people are, in this space, then you can always start with this option, and it is capped at 15 per employee per year. So at maximum you would pay is 25% more than the per employee per year pricing. Now so if you want to proceed, we actually have some volume discounts and some other goodies for you, so we can get into like specific pricing for your organization. But we just wanted to give you kind of the top line pricing before all the discounts come in. Any questions on implementation or pricing?
All right. Any questions in general before we always manage to time these things just about exactly right. This time we're short by a couple minutes. So, Mark, did anything else come in?
There is a question here. How can I better advocate for my own health needs when speaking with doctors or health providers?
Well, so Quizzify is done in the privacy of your own home or office every month. There is another companion product that goes with Quizzify that you might be very interested. So stay with me for a minute here, and I'll share my screen and take you to Quizzify doctor visit prep kits. Sec, share. Don't show this again. I don't want to see that again. I just want to go to doctor visit prep kits, which if you can imagine, we call it Quizify to go. If you can imagine exactly what we're talking about here, which is health literacy, but done at the in preparation for a doctor visit, we take everything that you need to know and we put it in a format that is the most useful to you when you go to the doctor. So, well, I'm just bad breath here. So we have an overview. First stop, the dentist, and then how you prepare for your visit, and then questions to ask the doctor, and then you can add your own questions here. And then what the doctor might ask or say, and then you can put this in your Apple Wallet. You can add it directly to your calendar so that when you go to the doctor for your visit, it's right there. But you're essentially completely prepared for this. And we cover everything from acne to zoster, A to Z. So the short answer is yes. And nobody else has anything like this. You can search the internet, you can collect it all yourself, or you can use it just with us. So I think I used up all our time on that answer. And Mark, unless there's anything else, I think we would sign off.
Yeah, and if anybody, again, if you'd like the recording and the slides, just reach out to me, Mark, M-A-R-K, at Quizzify.com, and I'd be happy to send you the recording and the slides. And thank you.
Bye, everybody.